Are you concerned with the direction our community is headed? With how the crime rate and poverty is increasing? With how the high desert is rapidly changing? So are we. This just isn't the same place anymore. We're not okay with how things are being managed, led, and ultimately headed. That's why we decided to not idly sit and watch as everything changed around us. Would you join us in being the change for our neighborhoods, our businesses, our cities, and our desert? We've hoped that as we grow, the community will become a better place to live, but it hasn't. We're fed up, and our guess is you are as well. Over 13,000 in our community spoke. We've listened. We've learned, and now we want to show you what we found. And then be here to help us all get involved, to see and be the change for our communities. High Desert Survey is here to help strengthen our community.
Good morning, High Desert, or what we call Mojave River Valley. My name is Joseph W. Brady. I'm the president of the Bradco Companies in Victorville. My wife and I also own Alliance Management Group and Barstow Real Estate Group in Barstow. We're the co-managing partners of Barstow Spanish Trails, LLC, a fully entitled 112-acre project on Interstate 15 and Avenue L in Barstow, and I'm proud to be the publisher of the Bradco High Desert Report. More importantly, I want to put a big plug in for Victor Valley Community College, where we are filming this morning, and to thank Dr. Walden and Deanna and the entire staff. This venue has been rented by Craig Garrett of ComAv Aviation out at Southern California Logistics Airport, so I want to thank him. We really felt that this was the appropriate place to kick off a subject matter that is deep to, I think, a lot of people, very serious to a lot of people. Let me give you a little history of kind of how we got here. I'm not one that usually reads any speeches, but I do have some notes that have been prepared. I've got a couple of people I really want to thank initially. I want to thank my wife, Deborah Brady, for allowing me to kind of fulfill a dream. I've been out here 32 years. I moved from Santa Barbara, California, became very involved in economic development issues and became very involved in local politics. I want to thank our office manager, Taylor Titus, who has been with us for 6 years. We're very proud of her, and I know that she's going to speak a little bit this morning to you. April Tyler, who was with our company for 10 years and was very much a part of helping us put together the first two press conferences that we did last year, 2019. We did it on July 8th, and then we did one on February, I think, 20th of 2020. They were the two largest press conferences held in the high desert, we now call it the Mojave River Valley, since the closure of George Air Force Base. So let me kind of take you back on kind of a path on what got us here. So I had the opportunity of moving here on Friday, May 13th of 1988, met some just incredible people in the high desert. But the one thing I found is, and at the time Apple Valley and Hesperia were not incorporated, but Apple Valley, Barstow, and Victorville were. I really had a sense that if we could get the five cities to work together and work together in tandem, that we could do so and create an economic development movement. And that's where I met people like Ron Rector and Brad Orchard, Supervisor Robert Lovingood, made a lot of great friends, and we pushed the region to market it as a region. And as things got good, we went through the closure of George Air Force Base, so we saw a major downturn that severely impacted the high desert region, cost the valley literally $1 billion between the closure, the physical closure of the base on December 28th of 1992 and 2000. But from 2000 to 2008, we saw a growth spurt that we've never seen. We built in the five cities in the first district and third district that we cover, about 2,000 square miles. We built literally 34,500 homes, new homes within the region. So that's a pretty stagnant number. But then when we look at what happened from 2008 after the Lehman Brothers downturn and the downturn on Wall Street and what literally nearly collapsed our national economy, we saw our housing values drop significantly from a high of $330,000 on a median price in 2007 to about $100,000 in 2010. But more importantly, this region's always been driven by land speculation and home building. Our home building is still off about 88%. So since 2010, we have built just a shade around 5,000 residential units. So when you take the 34,500 that we built, so many people that are watching this today are living in neighborhoods that were built back in those times. Well, during the 2008 to 2013 period of time, there were nearly 26,000 homes foreclosed in the region. So that created some major challenges. What I started to notice in about 2010 to 2015 was an increase in issues of poverty. We had a very large spike in poverty. We had a very large increase in welfare. And I'm not here to say that welfare is good or bad. What I'm here to say is that we've got a great opportunity, I think, to help educate a lot of people that are receiving those type of benefits. But when people take a look at the bigger picture, we are bringing into our area, including Needles, which brings about $20 million a year, $1.3 billion, yes, $1.3 billion a year of welfare is coming in the high desert region. And it's having a serious impact. It has an impact on all of our cities. I think Apple Valley has actually Astoria has the lowest. They're in the high 40s per capita, and the highest is Barstow at 78%. That to me is not acceptable. Our homelessness issue is an issue that we see throughout California, we see throughout our county. We have 2 of the 4 cities in the county that are seriously impacted by it, Barstow and Victorville. We also have San Bernardino, Redlands on down below that are impacted. We have 130,000 documented homeless within California. We have nearly 60,000 just in LA County. So you take the downturn of home building, which had a serious impact. So let's talk about residential sales. We're right now in a residential boom. People are feeling very good about the amount of homes that we're selling. We have literally a 2-month inventory. If you talk to any residential agent out there that controls a listing, these listings are being overbid. But let's put things in their proper perspective. So I went back a couple of years ago and I went to a company called CoreLogic. And I asked CoreLogic to take a look at a year before I had come here, which was 1985. So I moved here, like I said, 1988. And in 1985, if you look at the 20 zip codes that are the prominent ones within the high desert region, so that goes from Fort Irwin all the way over to our friends in Johnson Valley and west of Pinion Hills, Phelan and Wrightwood, and the 5 incorporated cities, the valley did about $190 million in resales. That was a pretty significant number back in those days, and probably the median price was probably, let's say, $80,000. Well, within 20 years, the high desert region, again the Mojave River Valley, did 4.5 billion. Yes, we went from 190 million to 4.5 billion. So imagine how many people were making money in real estate. We're building real estate. You've got escrow officers, title officers, and home inspection, home warranty, title people, customer service, and all the title companies. Everybody's making a ton of money. And then all of a sudden in 2008, the spigot got turned off. So when we went from $4.5 billion in 2000 and in 2005, we went from 4.5 billion to in 2010, we went to about 1.1 billion. So last time I checked, there's about $3.4 billion left. So if you just go to your calculator and people that were in the real estate business that didn't survive, if you took 3.4 billion and did 5%, it'd be a pretty big number. Well, while the economy has improved up here, and not necessarily has improved to the level that I believe that it should, or many other people, we are still down. We did last year in 2019 $1.8 billion in sales. Well, that's great. We were at 1 billion when we hit the bottom. We're now at 1.8. That means we've increased by $800 million. But at the end of the day, we're still lacking. If you take the commissions and those kind of things, which we made a presentation to our High Desert Association Realtors, and I want to give them a great plug. I want to give a plug to Diane Smith, our executive director, and Diane Carlton, our governmental affairs, Larry Mason, who's our current president, to that board. We came to that board early on in this and said, we need your help in getting the word out to the realtors. So we have about 1,200 realtors out here. We have an equal amount. We have a little bit more than that in the MLS. And we believe that real estate is the second largest group of people that are employed out here outside of the California Teachers Association, probably local government. So let's get back to where we are in real estate. So last year we did 1.8 billion. We're projecting this year we'll probably do 1.95 billion. But at the end of the day, we're still significantly less, so we don't have the amount of dollars flowing through our economy. So we really think that we have a long way to go. I do want to thank the people that I went to. So going back in time, I felt in 2013 that there was a problem, and I reached out to my good longtime friend, Dr. John Husing. So if you don't know who Dr. John Husing is, you're going to get to see him here in a moment. He is renowned. There's no economist that has done more work in the Inland Empire than Dr. John. He's been following it for over 50 years. He's been quoted in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the LA Times. He's highly regarded and somebody that I trust. So in 2013, we started meeting on an annual basis, and I remember one trip I went down with Don Brown with Lee & Associates and said to Dr. Husing, we've got some problems here. We got a crime problem. We're on the front page of the news all the time. My father was still alive in Los Angeles. He would call me and say, Joe, what's going on up there? Victorville's on the news, or Apple Valley, or one of the cities. So I'm not picking on a particular city where we're on the news all the time. And with that, Dr. Husing said, I think these are some of the things that you need to take a look at. Well, our annual coffee and our lunches every year ended up to a point where on October 1st of 2018, I was extremely concerned about this. And while my wife, my partner, we're celebrating, actually, tomorrow we celebrate a big anniversary on October 5th. Deb said to me, Joe, this is a bigger project than you can really afford to take on time-wise. And I said to her, Deb, we don't have any children. We want to leave a legacy on out here. We're going to be a part of the high desert region for a long period of time. But so I drove down and I had this monumental lunch with Dr. Husing. And it was funny, we ran into Pastor Tom Mercer that day in a great restaurant he was having lunch with his wife and his mom. And I said to Dr. Husing, I said, I think that the high desert is really in trouble. And he said, Joe, the high desert's in serious trouble. And this is what I would suggest. So he suggested I reach out to somebody who I had known of and worked with through the newsletter. Her name was Dr. Barbara Surodnik. He said maybe Dr. Surodnik could do a survey to see what the major issues are. So I contacted her, and Dr. Surodnik and her former partner used to give information in the Bradco High Desert Report. And Dr. Surodnik has done annual surveys of the region for years. So she was very familiar with how to not only do the survey, but we want to make it custom. So I drove down, I had lunch at Cal State San Bernardino. There's nothing better than having lunch with somebody like Dr. Surodnik in an academic atmosphere like that. And we talked for 2 hours, and I pleaded with her to help me come up with some kind of a solution. And she said, Joe, I'm going to come up with a survey for you. And so over the course of the next couple of months, we worked on the survey. We got input from some leaders here in the high desert region. We got input from Dr. Husing. But during that lunch, she said to me, Joe, you need to realize you're not going to get more than 2,000 people to respond. And for those that are watching that know me, I said to her, well, Doc, that's not going to work. I'm looking for 20,000. And she said, Joe, this is not going to work, but this is what it's going to cost. So the cost came out to $16,700. So I thought, okay. I signed the contract, and then I picked up the phone and called my friend John Ohanian. John is the master developer, the managing member of Terra Verde, who is going to be developing the high desert's most. It's a great master plan community called Tapestry in the southeast portion of Hesperia. They're going to start grading in the first quarter of 2021. And it's a fully entitled 9,633 acre property with 15,663 units that are approved. Their first super pad they're going to grade out and put curbs and gutters, and we'll have 2,104 lots. So I went out to BJ's and had lunch with John. John and I occasionally get together and have lunch. And at the end of lunch, I said to him, hey, John, I'm looking for some sponsors to help me do the survey. And very kindly and with his help, he agreed to put up $12,000. So with that, he challenged me to call our good friends at Lewis Retail. So I immediately, from the car, I called my friend Bob Martin, who's Vice President of Land Acquisitions at Lewis, and asked him if I could invite myself down to meet with Randall Lewis, who's Executive Vice President, and his brother Richard, who's President. And they're just a phenomenal company that have given so much to the entire Inland Empire region. By the time I got down there, they welcomed me, and we sat down, and they said, we're going to give $10,000 towards this endeavor. So why would they do that? One, they understand the high desert region. They've developed the Hesperia marketplace down there at Main and I-15, done a great job with Target and all the other majors. They've done the Target out in Northeast Apple Valley. Plus they've developed well over, I think, 4 million square feet of retail. They've done a tremendous amount. They're now moving in the industrial market, and they own a large portfolio of apartments. So they're a long-term player within the Inland Empire. So now I felt that we were in pretty good shape. But now I've got to go back and say to Dr. Husing, okay, if we have this data, what are we going to do with it? Well, he said to me, he said, Joe, the report is going to cost about $50,000 for me to do it. And instead of this just being an everyday report, we're going to do something that talks about what the issues are that came from the survey. So in a couple minutes here, you're going to hear from Dr. Sirotnik that talks about, what she did and how she peeled. Let me kind of go back a little bit and talk a little bit about what Dr. Sirotnik is going to talk to you, because it was a life-changing experience to not only watch the daily results and to work with all the great media. So on July 8th of 2019, as I said, we did this press conference and we kicked off the survey that started on August 1st. And it was intended to go until September 15th. And every day we were getting an update. So we saw these spikes and we saw the lulls and we saw big numbers come on in. And at the end of the day, we were able to beat Dr. Sirotnik's estimation, and I think it was by luck. But most importantly, I think the reason that we got 13,047 people is people in the high desert of the Mojave River Valley really care. So for people to tell me that they don't care, or some of our fellow elected officials tell me that they don't care, I disagree. With that, I also want to tell you this. I'm president of the board of Victor Valley Community College District. And so as a local elected official, I understand, and I think I have found that people really do care about this issue and they want to do something about it. So at the second press conference that we did in February, on February 20th of 2020, pre-COVID, I need to say, Dr. Sirotnik was able to take the onion and peel back and tell us what they found. So some of the things that we found was the number one issue that people were concerned about was crime, poverty, homelessness, lack of qualified jobs or lack of quality jobs, an uneducated workforce. Well, when you get to that kind of a topic, I share with our other trustees, Vice President John R. Pinkerton III, Vice President of our Board of Trustees. We'll be welcoming Sharon in as our new board member in December. We have Brandon Wood, we have Jennifer Tarpley, and longtime fellow board member Dennis Henderson. When you tell me that we have an uneducated workforce, and I know that we do, that creates kind of a hot button. So I'm really hoping that out of this venue and what you're going to see today, so you're going to see Dr. Sirotnik talk, and then you're going to see Dr. Husing talk. I'm really hoping that at the end of the day, that I can convince Dr. Walden and my fellow Board of Trustees here at Victor Valley Community College, and hopefully the leadership within the college. We have 855 employees out here on a 258-acre campus, and we got a balanced budget. We've got full accreditation. We're moving forward, and we're actually going to be competing for the Aspen Award. I'm really hoping that as a part of that competition to win the Aspen Award, that Victor Valley Community College will, very similar to what Dr. Ed Gould did back in 1990, help the economic development movement and act as the independent facility, or the independent group that works with not only all the cities on out here, but most importantly, those people that we think should be a part of this effort. Dr. Husing is going to talk a little bit later about the I think there's 8 or 9 major issues that he was able to identify through the numbers that Dr. Sirotnik had, and all that data that Dr. Sirotnik had will be held now at www.highdesertsurvey.com. So people have asked me, can I get a copy of the report? That was one of the things that we negotiated very easily with Dr. Husing, because Dr. Husing wants to be sure that everybody can get this report. So for the next year, and while our host Chad Lowy and his partner with Wowie Company are hosting this for free, and I want to thank them for all the job, for all the work they've done. Anybody watching this now live, or anybody watching this in the future, are going to be able to pull down this report. It's 80 plus pages. Then all the additional information that Dr. Sirotnik that is pulled will also be available. So let me go back and talk a little bit about what I learned with Dr. Sirotnik. So as we went through, when we cut off the survey on September 15th, she was pulling data all the time. And one day I called her and I said, because we were talking almost every single day, I said, Dr. Srodnik, what did you come away with? And she said, Joe, there's no apathy in the high desert region. People really are very, very, very concerned about what's going on out there. And I said, well, did they leave any comments on the survey? And she said, yeah, surprisingly, out of 13,047 people, we had about 2,600 that left their email addresses. And of those 2,600, many of them left a comment. So some comments were one sentence, one word, or a couple paragraphs. So I thought, okay, well, I love to read and I want to learn more about it. So I asked Taylor in the office one day, I said, can you have Dr. Srodnik send those comments? And Dr. Srodnik immediately said, Joe, it's about 488 pages of notes. I thought, well, that's not that's not a whole lot to read. Little did I find. So Taylor, the document comes over, we print it out, we hole punch it, we put it into a binder. And I sat down on a Friday night, and I remember it's about 5:45, and I called my wife Deb, and she said, what time will you be home? And I said, well, give me about an hour. I kind of want to start digesting this. And as I got to page 7, I quit. And I called her up and I said, I'm on my way home. And she said, why? Well, I can tell you this, for all of you that gave those comments, they really resonated. And I've gone through that binder from time to time, and I know how much you care, because this is our valley, this is our region, and we can change it. So with that, I also want to thank people that helped us get here, that helped pay the bills. I will tell you this, that our company was fortunate enough to be able to donate about $20,000 in in-kind labor, so we covered the payroll for our staff while they did this. It did take away work from our clients. We're hoping that many of our clients, they're able to watch this, because I think that people understand that the high desert in the Mojave River Valley has a tremendous amount of opportunity. We have a lot of land out here. We have infrastructure that needs to be extended. We have 5 great cities that want to see growth. We have people that want to live, work, and play here. We have 90,000 people a day that take that pass to go on down to make a living, that want to work here. We have Southern California Logistics Airport, which is one of our greatest assets. We built there's 5 million square feet that Sterling has built out there with a lot of Class A LEED certified buildings. But let me thank some of the major sponsors. I'm going to do this in alphabetical order. I'm going to say something about some of them. My friend, longtime friend, my neighbor Sheila Bath with Advanced Disposal, Assemblyman Jay Obermolde, I think probably the greatest assemblyman we've ever had here, and I'm assuming that he's going to win as our next congressman, and he'll do some great things back in Washington. Our friends out of Barstow Community Hospital, Burtech Colbert, Choice Medical Group. We've got a great medical group in Dr. Manamohan Nair, Samir Nair, Raul Nair, their families. They are very engaging. They very much care about our region. ComAv, Craig Garrett. Craig is a major employer. If you look at all those airplanes that are out at SCLA because of COVID, that company is the one that's working with Boeing, and they're a great asset. They're a great employer up here, and Craig, I personally appreciate your help. Covington Capital, Ken Shira, a major land developer who's come on in to the high desert region. They've been out here for a long period of time. I sat down and had a cup of coffee with him. I said, hey, Ken, can you give me 5? He didn't have any problems giving me 5,000 because he believes in the area. Him and his partners have a huge investment out here. Desert Valley Hospital, Dr. Prim Reddy and Mr. Fred Hunter. Fred, you and Marie Langley, we appreciate Dr. Prim. We always appreciate your support. They've done so much here for the college. They've invested about $5 million out here. Lola with El Dorado Broadcasters, thanks for all the stuff that you did for us. Reed Floco and Wesley Quintar, the Holiday Inn. So let me tell you this, when we were talking about doing the survey and I needed to kick it off, I needed to find somebody that would feed the 31 members of the media that went there. And Wesley, I called you on up. I asked you for a favor. Without a doubt, both you and Reed stepped up, and I really appreciated what you did. Our second lunch was actually paid for by Barstow Community Hospital, which we appreciate. Iris Gutierrez. Iris is a leader within the Hispanic community and has been very much behind this, and I know is one of our chief cheerleaders. Terry Kurtz. If you've lived in the high desert region for any period of time and you don't know who Terry Kurtz is, you'll know his voice. We do a lot of recording together, and he's just been a great friend. He cares deeply. He was a history teacher at Apple Valley High School for 40 years, is a major athlete before he got here. And Terry, I personally appreciate everything that you and your family have done to make this a better place. Our friend JJ Borgia and his associate Chris, who are helping us video this today. I came to know JJ through a church that he's a pastor. He's with First Assembly over on Nisqually and I-15. He works with a guy who I just have a ton of admiration with, Pastor John Martin. He works with our neighbors, the Arnolds, Pastor Arnold, Gwen, and both the Arnolds. Taggin, Pastor Arnold Taggin, his wife Gwen. Sorry about that, Arnold. I was introduced to JJ on a real estate deal we did at least many years ago, and then he was a participant with one of our senior associates, Paul Casilla, when Paul lost his father. And one day Paul and I were talking, and he said, JJ's got these capabilities, and I had no idea about Cleat or what they could do. And JJ and Chris, I cannot thank you enough for what you have taught me. If anybody's watching this and needs marketing, I don't think anybody looks at marketing the same way that they do. I'm the traditional marketing person. You know, you made a flyer and you mailed it out. Well, that's not the way things are done. So many of you are kind of scratching your head and saying, okay, well, who came up with this 11 o'clock? Well, it was actually JJ and his staff, and Ariel did a test 2 weeks ago of the high desert. Many of you didn't know that you were being tested, but they did a random survey of 11,000 people, and they figured out what time of the day that they had the highest penetration. And we did our weekly call with Nikki and Taylor in the office, and the next thing you know, they said the highest time to do this in the high desert, now it's probably because of COVID, so because so many people are around, was 11 o'clock on a Sunday morning. So I thought, well, we originally had this plan for September 30th at 10 o'clock, and so we decided to kind of think out of the box. So I know we had some friends, my good friend Lori Denson with the Burning Bush Baptist Church called me, and she said, Joe, you know, this interferes with our church, and I suggested that maybe they either move their church service back, or the nice thing is that this is recorded, this is live, this is going to be recorded. So if you miss part of it, or you want to take part of it and take it and sit down on the beach, you're going to be able to watch this for the next year. This is hopefully a video that's going to help us change the high desert of the Mojave River Valley and make it the great place we know that we can live, work, and play. Lamar Advertising. I can't thank Chris Price enough. They gave us a billboard out on I-15. Anytime that we have ever talked to Chris about doing something that benefits the region, Lamar's always there. You can tell why they are so good. I've talked about Randall and Richard Lewis with Lewis Retail. They love the Inland Empire. They're a family-owned business, and I'm grateful for all their support. Mitsubishi Cement, Michael Jasberg and his team on out there, I can't thank them enough. I mean, everybody seems to hit them up, and they're the one company that has just always been steadfastly, part of our region. Mojave River Valley News, Katrina Sieverts. Katrina, thanks for all the PR and all the support that you gave us. James Previty, we call him Jimmy, for those of you in the home building industry with Frontier Homes. Him and his family have had a great relationship with the high desert region. His dad, Jim, owned Forecast Homes, and they sold to Hovanian. I mean, Jimmy's been around a long time. He's very passionate. He's the only home builder that we came to, and when I called him, he immediately stepped in and said, Joe, I'm in. Prime Concepts, Dan Harley. If you don't know Dan's passionate. He's got a lot of people on Facebook that follow him, and he's been my friend for 25 years, and I'm very much appreciative to him. Dr. Ted Alejandre and his wife Barbara, Governmental Affairs Director for the San Bernardino County School District. Right after I had sat down with the Lewises, now I needed to get really serious. And with the help of Andy Harmillo and our friend Matt Wells, Matt's a part of the High Desert Consortium of educators, which Dr. Daniel Walden and Victor Valley College are a part of. With Andy's pushing and Matt listening, Andy and Matt went down to Dr. Ted, who I know well, and his wife Barbara, and they were in for $10,000. So I really want to thank them for the big push that they had. Again, John Ohanian with Terra Verde. John, all of us are appreciative of the fact that you gave me and you gave the High Desert the ability to do this. I'm indebted to you forever, and I really do appreciate your friendship. Daily Press, our friends Matt Cabe and Steve Knockin, thanks for all the coverage that you gave us. Thanks for the headline this week. Thanks for covering this. And Matt, I want to tell you this. You and I had a great conversation the other day as I'm coming out of Prescott. It was a long conversation, and we both agree on one thing. This is not about Joseph Brady. This is not about anybody on here. This is about our future. And the one thing that I think I'm going to sum this up with, we need to identify those people in the high desert that want to become a part of leadership. I'm 64 years old, and it's my time to help nurture people that want to be a part of this. And that's one of the things I'm going to talk to Dr. Walden about, and Dr. Walden here at Victor Valley College, my great friend Dr. Eva Bagg out of Barstow Community College. I will put a plug in that sometime in October. I won't give the date or the place. Our two boards are going to meet. We did it the first time when I was president of the Board of Trustees, and we're going to be talking about this because I can tell you, our 5 trustees or our other 4 trustees, and there are 5 out there, we all care about one thing. We care about quality jobs. We care about raising the bar for people's living. We want to seriously reduce our poverty, seriously reduce our homelessness, and most importantly, seriously reduce our crime issue. So Matt, thanks for that a great conversation here today, and I think both you and I are on the same page. I'd like to thank our friend Don Fish with Tri-Community News. They cover the Field and Pinion Hills and Wrightwood area. He's a great guy. Victor Valley News Group, Hugo and Gabriel, you guys have become great friends. Obviously, you have a huge following. You guys, went way out for us, and I'm really hoping that you and that both of you will continue to promote the message to your readership and the people that watch your social media, which I think sometimes might be different than my age group that might be watching something else. But you've got a great channel. We really appreciate what you've done. Lastly, I'd like to thank Chad Wowie and his partner with Wowie for hosting the website and doing all the work that you've done. Again, at the end of the day, I'm just kind of looking at some of my notes. This is about, I think, the Valley coming together and identifying some leaders on out here. And I'm going to kind of talk to somebody in our office right now. Her name's Taylor Titus, and Taylor's going to be up here in a minute. Taylor came to us 6 years ago through a program that we offered the training. And Taylor, I think, is living proof that if you give somebody the opportunity, they will excel. Taylor and I are obviously different in age. She's worked with us for 6 years. I couldn't tell you what her age is, but I can tell you one thing. Taylor is, I think, part of the community out there that really want to be a part of the community, very much like I was very much a part of the community, back in the days when we had the Mojave River Valley Economic Council and the High Desert Regional Economic Development Authority and all those great things. I mean, we participated in 11 chambers and all that. And I really would encourage Mark Creffield with the Victor Valley Chamber of Commerce and the Hesperian Janice Moore with Apple Valley and all the chambers, Phelan and Wrightwood, Pinion Hills, Lucerne Valley, I think that Newberry Springs has theirs back. I know that Ellendale doesn't, and Barstow, Eugene, my friend Eugene. We need to identify younger people that want to become a part of leadership. I know this is not going to be a popular thing for me to say. But if we take a look at where we are today on October 4th of 2020, and we look at the leadership that we have within the region, I'm not pointing fingers at anybody in particular, are we happy about where we are today? Or is it time to start taking a look at, it's not the old boys that they call it, which, it's not intended to be a sexist comment. Is it time for us to sit back as a region, and we're like a family, there's 475,000 of us on out here, and say, we maybe haven't done real well. I mean, we can't blame where we are today on COVID. We can't blame this on home building. I mean, I think we need to bring the cities together. We've got a very big election here on November 3rd. I hope that all the cities will quickly, after they get seated with their new councils, sit down and reach out. I do want to be a part of helping facilitate that ultimate conversation. And again, we'll hopefully sit down with Victor Valley College and Dr. Walden and Dr. Bagg and say, I think that the community college would be the great place to do this. I think with the help of Dr. Ted Alejandre and Barb, they can help bring people together, kind of separate out some of the not necessarily egos, but we all have turf out here that we're very concerned about. And I think the time has come that I believe that the high desert has just got some great possibilities of high-speed trains coming here. That's a real deal. I can tell you that real estate is picking on up. We can feel it. And with that, I'm very proud to introduce Taylor Titus, who's our office manager. I mean, 6 years ago, she came to me and she came to work. She never thought that she'd be in the position to be the office manager, and she is. And she speaks from her heart, and I want to thank her for stepping up. Nobody asked her to do this. She asked me the other day, she said, do you mind if I, kind of talk about what I need to say? And I said, I want you to say whatever you can. And with that, I'm gonna sit on back and watch the balance of the program. If anybody has any interest or any comments, you can contact me at 760-951-5111, extension 101. You can text me on my cell just during normal hours at 760-954-4567. I'd rather get an email, and I'm going to ask our friends JJ and Chris if they can put my email up on the board. If you email me, put in the words High Desert Survey. Give me a couple days to get back to you. I get about 400 emails a day, but I do really care about the High Desert region. This is where I met my wife and my partner. We'll celebrate our anniversary tomorrow. And Deb, I want to tell you one thing. I really appreciate you supporting this. And God bless America, and God bless our great country.
We know that if we all get involved, we all can change the trajectory of where our community is headed. Would you join us? Would you be part of the change our desert needs? Visit us online at www.highdesertsurvey.com.
Hello everyone, it's Assemblyman Jay Obernolte. I was very proud to help sponsor the High Desert Strategy Report this year. The Strategy Report is a critically important component of identifying the problems and the opportunities that exist in our high desert community and mapping a path for getting from where we are now to where we could be. I'd like to thank my friend Joe Brady for helping to put that report together. I was very proud to sponsor it, and I can't wait to hear what you've come up with.
Survey is here to help our community.
Hi, my name is Dr. Barbara Sorotnik, and I'm here to talk to you today about the results of the High Desert Survey. Just to give you a little bit of a background of myself, I'm a professor of statistics at Cal State San Bernardino. Yes, everybody's favorite course. I also teach business analytics and supply chain management. Plus, I wear a different hat. I'm the director of the Institute of Applied Research. Since 1985, we've been doing projects with economic forecasting and trying to recruit and retain good foster parents, mapping the supply chain of the defense industry in California, lots of different kinds of projects. But our bread and butter tends to be survey research. We like to be able to give communities a voice. So that's where Mr. Joe Brady heard about me, and a couple of years ago he contacted me and said, I really want to do a survey in the high desert. I want to identify the issues that are on the minds of the people and to try to find solutions. Well, I like that idea of trying to follow up the survey with solutions so that it's a survey that actually means something. Well, he went away, talked to Dr. John Husing about finding solutions, and about a year later he came back and said, let's do it. And so we spent some time constructing questionnaires for residents and people who work in the region or business people but live elsewhere, and also leaders. And that's where we are today. We launched a little bit before the beginning of August. And what ended up happening is I talked to Joe right beforehand, and he said, Barb, I'd love to be able to get 20,000 surveys in the region. Well, my professional sense was to say, that may be a little bit of a stretch. In Hemet, I had 1,000 surveys when I did a city survey there. City of Riverside, I had 2,000 surveys, so 20,000 is a stretch. Of course, inside I was going, yeah, right, 20,000 surveys. Well, I was shocked because in 4 days we had 2,224 surveys done. That's absolutely unprecedented. It was a great success. We had hoped to be able to roll out the results in May of this year, but COVID hit. And so here we are today, and I'm glad you're with us. Well, we did get a lot of responses. It really was amazing. And that's due to the efforts of Joe Brady, who was out and about trying to promote, but also the media and city leaders. They were really the ones that made it happen. What did we end up with? 13,046 usable surveys from residents. That's just amazing. And over 2,500 people were willing to give us their names and contact information because they wanted to get more involved in the solutions. We also had a pretty good representation from non-resident workers and business people. Leaders, not so much. We only ended up with 89 surveys completed from leaders, and we did send out an awful lot. So that was a bit disappointing, but it was doable. Well, let's focus on the respondents that are residents of the area. Where do they live? Well, about 3/4 of them live in the major cities. We're talking about Apple Valley and Victorville and Hesperia, but it was really wide-ranging across the high desert. We had about 4 or 5% in Adelanto and Barstow. Spring Valley Lake did a great job promoting. Plus, it again was spread through all of the cities and census-designated areas. It covered people from 18 years old up to the people in their 90s, people who had just moved to the area, and up to 89 years. That's how long they've lived here. So we did have a really good representation. We asked people, how did you hear about this survey? And the answer is, it definitely took a village. 41% had heard about it from the Victor Valley News. 18% social media, specifically Facebook. And of course, some people heard from talking to family and friends and from other media sources like the Daily Press. And I want to thank everybody for helping to get the word out to people. Please participate. It's an important survey. Well, what did we ask? We asked a lot of different kinds of questions, some of which are standard quality of life questions that you'll see anywhere, and some which were specific to the high desert. We asked about the best and the worst things about living in the area. We asked about crime, perceptions of safety. We asked about confidence in elected officials. Plus, we asked some real specific questions such as, Cajon Pass, how much of an issue is that? But before we go ahead and actually see some of the results, I told Joe that there was absolutely nothing worse than having a survey promising people that they have a voice and then doing nothing after that. All that does is that causes a lot of pessimism. People disconnect from life in the region. Well, you can see with some of these quotes that some people actually felt that way. Take a look at the first quote. We've participated in this type of survey more than once. We've voiced our concerns, and this is just going to be just another survey. Or another person, there's no point in making suggestions. Very discouraged, obviously. Nothing changes in the desert. No one cares. Well, there was at least one person that was really excited. I was so happy to get this survey, I almost squealed. They wanted us to do something to identify, promote those ideas, and have solutions. Right now, as this person said, it mostly sucks. Thanks. So with all of that, the answer is, I am an incurable optimist. But if the city leaders and the residents all want to get together and have the courage to actually address some of the issues you're going to be hearing about, it can happen. That's my belief. This survey will indeed be different. So let's start off with the positives. Ratings of the high desert as a place to live. 55% of the people that we surveyed said, yes, the high desert is a very good or a fairly good place to live. Now, that sounds great, but I need to put all these numbers into context. Turns out I did a survey at just about the same time, county-wide, the Inland Empire Annual Survey. 2/3 of the people county-wide in San Bernardino County think that the county is a very good or fairly good place to live. So obviously, not quite as nice as we would like to have it in the high desert. Open-ended question. What are the best things about living in this region? And as you can see on the slide, the first thing, housing. 62% said affordable housing is really the best thing about living in the region. And another 42% said, I like the idea I can get a bigger house on a bigger lot. So housing was really a very, very big issue. Another thing, family and friends. 40% of the people said, I'm around family, friends, people I enjoy. And another 10% said, the place is filled with friendly people. Yes, 38% said, I like the clean air. That was really wonderful to hear, and 29% did focus on a good climate. And finally, as the top ones, we've got small town feel. A lot of the people did feel that they enjoyed the idea of not having a crowded area, small town feel. Now, you've probably noticed that these percentages I've just given you add up to more than 100%. No, I'm not just klutzing it. People actually were able to give up to 5 answers, and so that's why the numbers didn't add up. But lots of good things to say about the high desert. Please notice these quotable quotes. I'm very happy living in the high desert. Great place to live and work. That's wonderful to hear. We love the clean area and open space, friends we've made, and we don't plan on living anywhere else. That's great too. We all know our neighbors, look out for one another, great place to live and raise our kids. So people do enjoy living in the region. On the other hand, what I kept hearing was, I love the high desert, but. So the but is what we really do need to talk about. Well, we started looking at some specific ratings of services, public and private services, and people were allowed to rate as excellent, good, fair, or poor. Up on the top, library services. Now, some people think in this day and age with digital services, why library services? Well, the answer is library services are a really important place for people to come, gather, use the computers, have reading for their kids. It's really a very important service, not something that we want to do away with. 72% said it's excellent or good. That contrasts with that county-wide survey of 79%. So a little bit lower, not terrible. Fire and paramedic, again lower. But really the big jump came with police and sheriff services. 51% said that those services are excellent or good. And that contrasts with 66% in that county-wide survey. I also must point out that that was way before all of the media focus on police reform and problems that we're hearing about right now. So again, this survey was done a year ago. If it was done now, I have a feeling those numbers would be a lot lower. Parks and Rec, 51% excellent or good. Again, such an important service for kids to have exercise running around and learn how to deal with other people as they're playing. Very, very important service, and probably that needs to be improved. But now let me go all the way down to the bottom. What's at the bottom? Local streets and roads, maintenance of local streets and roads. 16% said that was excellent or good. Clearly there is a problem there. Even in the county-wide survey we did, that figure was 28%. So High Desert needs to do some work in the maintenance of local streets and roads, entertainment, that doesn't seem to be pleasing people too much, transportation, and you're going to hear a lot more about that. My words on that one, city leaders really need to act now. I know there's budgetary constraints, but things really need to be done. Comments. After each one of these ratings, we said to people, whatever's on your mind, tell me about these services. And what I found interesting is that many of the comments that came out didn't really directly relate to the services. What I saw was 26% of the people said, we need more law enforcement officers. So that kind of goes along with police and sheriff. But then 11% just said, crime is out of control, do something. And people talked about the lack of traffic enforcement, so that's kind of linked. But then how about deal with the homeless and panhandlers? Well, that's not really a service, but they talked about that. Drugs and gangs being a big problem. People also talked about medical services needing to improve. And again, they picked on the roads that need to be repaired, very important. They talked about family and youth activities. We need to have more of that. And personally, after COVID, I am looking forward to going to a place to have fun, going to parks and entertainment venues and festivals. Well, even then, 13% said it's just not good enough. And then the last one, 10% of the comments that we got focused on the lack of government leadership. It focused on a perception of corruption in the area. Again, something that really does need to be fixed. So, actionable data. What are the high desert residents most concerned about? What did they verbalize? Well, again, open-ended question with up to 5 answers. What are the biggest concerns or negatives about living in the high desert? Now, before I click, think about it. What would you be saying? I have a feeling you'd be saying something about these. 73% talked about crime as being the worst thing, crime and violence. We also had 30% specifically talking about gang activity, and we had 47% saying drugs. This is really a big issue. So that's something that's definitely important. People are afraid to get out of their homes. They're afraid to shop, which is an important thing in terms of economic development of the region. They're afraid to get out and interact with people, and they're going down the hill to spend their money. So this is really a very, very important thing to be addressing. We did specifically want to probe a little bit on crime, and we said, what is your level of fear of being the victim of a serious crime, meaning either a violent crime or a very costly crime? And we said, are you very fearful, somewhat fearful, not fearful, et cetera, et cetera? So just taking a look at these data. High desert, 70% said yes, they are very or somewhat fearful. That's huge. Again, we need to put this into perspective. So county-wide, when we did our survey at the same time last year, 36% county-wide said they're very or somewhat fearful. Big difference. And then, just for fun, I focused in on the city of San Bernardino. Even that city, which has a crime index of 2, meaning it's considered to be safer than only 2% of cities in the United States, even in that city, only 50% said that they were very or somewhat fearful of being the victim of a crime. Serious stuff. Well, where in the high desert is this the worst? And looking at this slide, sort of everywhere, but the high point is Victorville, 80% of the people saying very or somewhat fearful. And then it goes down from there. I'm only picking the 6 cities that had more than 400 responses to make it statistically valid. But you can see that Spring Valley Lake was probably the best of those cities. Like I said, Victorville, the worst. Continuing, we asked, is it safe to walk in your neighborhood? Well, in terms of the stat, 36% said yes. Again, I want to counter that with the City of Riverside survey we did not too long ago. There, 70% said yes. Now, I have to be fair, another 38% of the people in the high desert said, well, I feel somewhat safe to walk. It's like, what does that really mean? But anyway, the stats are pretty stark on that. Well, we asked people, so why are you not feeling safe? The people had said that they weren't. We asked them why. We kind of expected it, but notice 58% of the people said, yep, it's crime. There are another 12% that said homeless and panhandlers, that's what makes them feel unsafe when they go and walk around the neighborhood. But there were also some things that should be a little easier to fix immediately, hopefully, and that's no lighting or poor lighting in areas, and also no or bad sidewalks. Again, I'm realistic. I know about city budgets, but the more we can fix that, the better things are going to be for people. And now let's take a look at the quotes about crime. What I did is I downloaded all of the quotes that people made, and some of them were entire paragraphs long. There were 488 pages of quotes just about crime in the region. Take a look at a few of these. Crime, drugs, and gangs are out of control. It's not even safe to go to the store during the day without fear of being carjacked. The next one, I must admit this was absolutely heartbreaking to read. The community is very unsafe. I can't even let my little girls outside alone. That's amazing. I pray every day before bed God will find a way for us to leave here. Well, that's saying something. We need a higher ratio of law enforcement and crackdowns on absentee landlords. That's going to be discussed a little bit later by Dr. John Husing. Well, we need people that have a stake in our community, obviously. We have good people here who are leaving in droves. They no longer feel safe. So those are really important quotes about crime. All right, away from crime, but to a related issue, another major concern was homelessness, and we had 47% of the comments focusing on homelessness. If you take a look, again, it's not just a homelessness issue, it's related to crime. This is an important thing. So let's take a look at the quote here. The homeless in the high desert have become a blight, and I'm embarrassed to have guests come to my community anymore. So we meet friends down the hill, usually Rancho. It does continue to grow. In other words, Rancho gets the dollars, not the high desert. They will continue to get my money until the high desert does a better job. Well, what do we mean by better job here? What are the solutions? Well, mental health services, housing. All of those things are really important. Employment programs also. So hopefully the city can do a little something about that. Now, I must confess, this is not just a high desert issue. Obviously, it's not. And as a matter of fact, in statewide surveys by PPIC, 23% said that homelessness is their biggest issue. That's up from 7% the previous year. So again, it's not just high desert, but it is a problem that high desert needs to address. Another most negative thing, yes, you can see travel in and out of the high desert. We have 29% that said that freeway congestion is a really, really big problem. 20% saying that even driving around the city, that is a big problem. But the big news, 41% said travel in the Cajon Pass. That's really the biggest problem here. Well, that's absolutely huge. And anticipating that, we did put some specific questions on the survey about traveling the Cajon Pass. And the first one was, traveling the Cajon Pass is stressful. What do you think? Do you agree? Do you not agree? Well, there were 35% of the people that are frequent travelers of the Cajon Pass, 1 to 5 days a week. We actually decided to focus our statistics on the 84% of the people that travel at least a few times a month. Look at the statistics. 56% say strongly agree, yes, it's stressful, and another 33% are agreeing. Obviously, that is a big problem here. 89% saying, oh my gosh, I hate to be traveling there. It's stressful. This was an interesting one. Other than when it snows, I can usually travel the Cajon Pass without worrying about it being shut down. Well, take a look at the amount that agree. 33% agree, 6% strongly agree. The other 61% are not saying that. They're saying that they worry about it. There are fires, there are accidents, there's construction, and they don't know if they're going to be able to make the drive in the time that they need to make their drive. They're worried. Did it get any better after 2015 when the construction was done? Sadly, no. 39% strongly disagreed that it's gotten better, and another 35% just plain disagreed. So we've got 74% of the people saying, you know, you tried to do something about it, it didn't quite work. All right, let's broaden this out. Enough about the Cajon Pass for right now. A lot of people are commuting. So how is their commute wherever they're going? Well, the median round trip commute was 45 minutes. That means half of the people take longer than that to get to where they're going, round trip, get there and come back, and half the people said less than 45 minutes. The median mileage, 22 miles. Well, okay, that's fine. That may not look like a lot, but that kind of commuting actually takes its toll. We did a quick calculation based on wear and tear on the car, figuring 58 cents a mile, that's the IRS amount, and also the cost of a person's time. That came out to per year cost per person, $7,568. Wow. It also takes its toll psychologically, physically. I mean, take a look at it. If you're sitting in your car for all of this time commuting, guess what? You're not going to be exercising. Obesity follows, high blood pressure follows, stress, back and neck pain, all of these things follow, plus family problems. There was a survey done several years ago that said that 1 in 5 kids after they leave school are home alone between 3 o'clock and 6 o'clock in the afternoon. 3 hours to get into a lot of trouble and engage in risky behaviors. We're talking crime, drugs, sex, whatever. It's a problem. And of course, when everyone's stressed and dealing with all that, divorce is a big problem, depression. So commuting does definitely take its toll, especially for those that are stressed on the Cone Pass, as we talked about. Some quick quotes here. Well, the first one, forgive my language, but a person said, "Fix the damn roads." Okay, probably some of you agree. We're trapped up here due to the traffic flow. Roads are a disaster. This next person, the bottom bullet, smart person. Having more job opportunities would help. That's a solution to all the commuting problems. It all starts with stimulating our local economy, bringing better jobs, not just a bunch of restaurant jobs, although there's nothing wrong with that, but better jobs also, high-skilled jobs to the high desert. All right, well, if all of those negatives weren't enough, let's talk about dumping and littering. Yes, that was mentioned by a lot of people. The reason people are so concerned about this is that there is a link between dumping and crime. Actually, in the 1990s, there was something developed called the broken window theory. It was developed by Police Commissioner Bill Bratton and the mayor at the time, Rudy Giuliani. What they realized is that when there is a broken window, or littering, or dumping, or whatever, people stop having pride in the area. Crime builds up. They see a little bit of crime, like a broken window, and more crime happens. So if you really want to reduce crime, as they were very successful doing in New York, do something about that broken window. Well, in our case here, I'm saying do something about the littering and the dumping. Some quotes here. A person who wants to criminalize by fines the property owners that don't maintain their property. You need more consequences, heavier consequences to all of that. Code enforcement and policing have to be a priority to make sure that the neighborhoods don't look like dumps. And this last one, this one was a difficult one, talking about some of the houses in the neighborhood full of trash, etc. The value of my home is nothing because of all of this. It's why I'd like to move from this area. And we're going to talk about that in just a few moments. All right, well, how about the economy? Is that a negative? Is that a positive? Well, we asked people to rate the economy in the high desert, and it turns out that 26% of high desert residents rated the economy as excellent or good. Only 26%. Placing it in context, that survey of San Bernardino County I've been talking about, that was 38% felt that the county's economy, excellent or good. And in a Gallup poll of Americans all across the United States, 53%. All of these polls were taken at about the same time. Again, now with COVID, it's a lot worse. So the economy is a real issue for people. So is the employment picture. 40% of the people cited lack of job opportunities as one of the most negative things about life in the desert. And 10% said lack of the educated workforce. Well, let's make it a little more personal. We asked people, compared with a year ago, how are your finances? Are you better off, the same, worse off? Well, nationally, when people were asked that question, 50% said they were better off. Inland Empire survey in San Bernardino County, 32% better off. High desert, 26%. Obviously, that's a problem. All right, well, let's broaden out just a little bit to some other quality of life questions. We said for people that have kids, my children's school prepares them for a good job or career. Do people agree or not? 52% agreed or strongly agreed, and that's pretty good. The bottom one, my children don't feel there's enough to do in the high desert. Oh yeah, 72% said that. But the one on this slide that really concerned me, my children plan to stay in the high desert when they grow up, 9%. The young people are leaving. This is not the sign of a healthy community, unfortunately. And then continuing with some other general quality of life questions. There's nothing to do where I live, 54% said that. And that's why they're coming down the hill and having commuting problems. I feel a sense of belonging to my community, 47%. Wait a minute, one of the best things about living in the high desert was supposed to be the small town feel and all of that, but yet 47% feel a sense of belonging. The high desert is a place where I can realize the goals I have for my future, only 37%. And then this last one, this is an interesting one. It's easy to communicate with my city officials, 29%. Now folks, in this digital age, why is it so hard to communicate? This basically is causing a huge problem and a huge lack of confidence in the city officials. Well, we did ask specifically, what is your level of confidence in elected officials to adopt policies that are going to be benefiting the region? Again, placing things in context, where we were asking about elected officials in the U.S. executive branch, 45% of the people said they have a great deal of confidence or some confidence. That was a Gallup poll. When we did our San Bernardino County survey, 57% said great deal or some confidence. High desert, only 35% have confidence in their elected officials that they will do things to benefit the general community. Where is it best and worst? Well, up on the top in green, just for comparison, I have our San Bernardino County figures, 57%. Spring Valley Lake and Barstow, 41%, not too bad. At the bottom, Adelanto, 18% of the people say that they have confidence in their elected officials. This is something that has to be fixed. The elected officials need to be reaching out and doing something to establish more confidence. All right, well, we're getting down toward the bottom, but how big a problem are these issues that you see? We actually gave them a list of issues, and we asked them to rate them on a scale from 0, not a problem at all, up to 100, a big problem. And the survey had little sliders where they could go back and forth. The top 3, homelessness, crime, littering. For residents, those top 3, same top 3 for non-residents, the people that work in the region and then go home somewhere else. Also, lack of jobs, lack of an educated workforce, that was all the same for those 2 groups. But I want to highlight leaders. For the leaders, they also talked about homelessness and crime, but take a look at the bottom, apathy. 61% of the leaders said that apathy was a huge problem, or let me change that. So now let's take apathy. 61 on a scale from 0 to 100, saying apathy was a problem. Wow. Folks, there were 13,000 people that filled out this survey. There were over 2,500 people that were willing to give their contact information to work on problems. I'm sorry, that's just not apathy. So having a ranking of 61 on a scale from 0 to 100 in terms of a big problem, yeah, okay, well, that's definitely a disconnect between the residents and the leadership. Well, maybe that's one reason why some people are wanting to move. So we did ask specifically, renters, would you be interested in purchasing a home in the high desert? Take a look, 45% said no. Another 31% said, yeah, maybe in the next few years, which probably means no. And then the other 24% said, yeah, maybe within the next year. How about homeowners? Suppose you wanted to sell your house, would you buy again? 23% said yes. The other 77% said, oh no, I'm moving to another area. Finally, everybody was asked, I would move out of the high desert if I could. Wait till you see these stats. 64% agree or strongly agree. If they could move out, they would. That's a problem. Obviously, it is a problem for a healthy community. Take a look at some of the comments. My husband and I have 6 more years until retirement, and we are 99% sure we won't be sticking around. And then the last part of that bullet, shame on the city council for fighting more amongst themselves than fighting hard for our town. Shame on you. People didn't hold back. They definitely let us know what they thought. I hate this place. Hopefully I'll be able to move next year. It's embarrassing to say that I live in the high desert. That's sad, folks. Cajon Pass needs some sort of a solution. If I could move out of the desert tomorrow, I would. And then my parents moved to Victorville in 1990 because it was a safer place to raise us kids. Now I don't feel safe here. I will be moving us out of here. Not a good thing. All right, we've been going on and on about some statistics. What are the key takeaways? First of all, yes, there is somewhat of a disconnect between residents, non-residents, and the leadership. People do like the high desert, but there are issues that have to be addressed. I also want to really focus on the fact that this is not one of those surveys that's there just to tell a story and sit on a shelf. We have solutions coming, and that's what Dr. Husing is going to be talking about. Is it going to be easy to turn things around? Obviously, no. Can it be done? Like I said, I'm an incurable optimist. Yes, it can be done, but only if the residents and the city leaders come together and have the courage to work on the solutions together. That's the only way it's going to happen. So, as a final quote about why we're here today and why hopefully you have tuned in, I was trying to think of a final thing to say, and I couldn't have said it better than this quote. I challenge you to find a place that doesn't have crime and homelessness in California. This person's realistic. Given the option to live in other California cities, I think our high desert is a great option. Unite our community, don't divide it. Please become a champion of what's best here and be part of finding a solution to our challenges. I hope that that will happen. I want to thank you for all of your attention. Please feel free to contact me if there's any questions. I'm more than happy to drill down on certain city results if you're interested. It's important. I'm part of this, and hopefully you are too.
It's time we influence the direction of our cities. It's time to get involved. Be the change our communities need. Be the difference.
Education leaders rely on data to make important decisions regarding the academic future and earning potential of students in San Bernardino County. Preparing our students from cradle to career and retaining their talents within their own communities is essential to improving the quality of life for all residents. An educated and prepared workforce has the potential to transform any economy. As the San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools, I support the need to use data to drive innovation and change for student success. I look forward to working with renowned economist Dr. John Husing Dr. Barbara Sirotnik with Cal State San Bernardino, the Bradco companies, and all stakeholders in the high desert to transform data into positive action.
This is our desert. This is our community. This is our home.
This is a great opportunity for me to introduce somebody that I just have a tremendous amount of respect for, Dr. John Husing. I mean, nobody's traveled the world like he has. Nobody understands the Inland Empire like he does. And nobody understands more, I think, where the high desert is today than Dr. Husing. So today he's going to talk about the regional economy and how we kind of got here. The next thing he's going to talk about is the homeless issue and what we need to cure that. We're going to take a look at the poverty issue and what we need to do to reduce that. We're going to talk about crime and what we need to do that. We're going to talk about how we create a better workforce. We're going to talk about jobs and opportunity. You know, when you have an issue like we are dealing with in the high desert region, it creates a lot of great opportunities. And the nice thing about Dr. Husing is the glass is always half full. It's never half empty. So I'm pleased. I'm honored. I've gotten to know him and his wife Deborah quite well. They're a great couple. He is passionate about the Inland Empire, and he's very passionate about the high desert region. And I would encourage any group that needs some help. I know he's trying to semi-retire, and John, you probably don't want to hear this, but I still think that you've got quite a bit of energy left, and you can help us understand those major issues.
Good day. I'm John Husing, economist, who's studied the Inland Empire and the high desert for 55 years. So it's a subject that I really enjoy and one I've taken a lot of hard looks at. About 9 months ago, Joe Brady and I were having lunch, and he talked about finding people saying that they had a lot of concern about the way the high desert was evolving. And was there anything that we could do to identify the issues, talk about why they were arising, and then what might be done about them? I said to Joe, the first thing he needed to do was meet Barbara Sirotnik, shown here as well, and who you've just heard from. And Barbara is a professor at Cal State San Bernardino who specializes in, among other things, doing surveying. And so together they worked out, put online a survey that an unbelievable 13,000 residents answered. So that sort of gave us a picture of the issues. So my job, once those were identified, was to say, okay, let's look at the data to see if it supports what the public is saying. Let's analyze the data. And then I've never been one to believe the numbers were necessarily true. So I then set out and held 50 interviews with high desert leaders from both the public sector and the private sector, mostly private sector, asking them what they thought. And then combining those two things together, what I then have done is set out to explain what happened, why it happened, and then make some recommendations, which you'll hear now, about what might be done about it. When we say high desert, this is the area that I looked at. It's from Oak Hills to Barstow, from Pinion Hills to Lucerne Valley, the population and the companies that exist in that area. One of the things I've learned in the long time I've been watching Southern California, is that communities go through a 3-stage process by which they grow up or mature once they get added onto the greater Los Angeles area. I'm going to look at stage 1 of that and stage 2 of that, which apply to the high desert. Stage 1, to break it into 3 pieces, begins in a way that anybody that lives in the high desert knows. At some point, residential developers figured out they could no longer build a house that the middle class could afford anywhere else in the valleys. And so the market jumped up to the high desert really in the 2000s, very aggressively, which brought a lot of people. But when a lot of people moved, there were not a lot of jobs at that point. So one of the things you then ended up with is stage two. Suddenly commuting became a major issue because people had to go someplace else to go to work. The third piece of the puzzle occurred when enough people lived in the high desert for the retail and consumer services folks, people that are, in that case, cutting hair, styling hair, working in gyms, doing lawns, whatever. When they decided there was enough to expand in the high desert, what we call population serving jobs. So that's stage one in the process. Every area goes through it, and the high desert has been in it up until right now. When we look at why this goes on, first of all, this is a chart of prices. Prices in the high desert versus the rest of the Inland Empire, LA County, and Orange County. High desert, this is first quarter 2020. The middle price home, half above, half below, was at $337,000. It was $262,000 for existing homes. But if I put these circles on here, first of all, in the new home market, you save well over $100,000 if you move to the high desert from the rest of the Inland Empire. It's over $300,000 if you move to the high desert from LA County, and nearly $600,000 if you move from Orange County. That's new homes. If we look at existing homes, coming from the rest of the Inland Empire, you save almost exactly $100,000. People coming from LA would save $400,000, and coming from Orange, about $550,000. So there's a huge financial incentive in the housing market to migrate up to the high desert. This is also true when we look at rental levels, folks that can't afford to buy but are looking to rent. These are apartment rents. And what you see is if you come from the rest of the Inland Empire, you save $360 a month, $976 a month coming from Orange County, and $1,124 a month coming from LA County. That is why a lot of people have gone up to live in apartments. In terms of single family rentals, as you can see from the yellow bars on here, compared to the high desert, you save substantially renting a home monthly compared to the Inland Empire and the other coastal counties. Now the result of those three phenomena, and there we see the savings on monthly rents. What we've seen is enormous population growth in the high desert, particularly from 2010 to 2020. You can see how steep the line is of growth. You see in the circle, 37.8% growth in that 10-year period. It has continued growing since 2010, but slower. It's up 11.7%. That was adding 45,000 people versus 106 in the earlier decade. The slowdown has been because of a combination of economic phenomena such as the mortgage meltdown that occurred. Now, one of the things, if you look at what kind of jobs exist in the high desert, you'll see here that the biggest slice of the pie is retail, followed by education, by health, and then the combination of all of the smaller sectors, dry cleaners, people that are, again, working in hair salons, people working in gyms. Overwhelmingly, those are the kinds of jobs that exist in the high desert. They are called population serving jobs, and this is part of what grows up when the population gets large enough. What's missing are higher paying sectors. As a result of that, we see in the first quarter of 2019 that the high desert is paying in its jobs 18.3% of companies located from Riverside to Corona, 16.1% less than the area Rialto to Yucaipa, and 11.3% less than the area from Ontario to Fontana. So across the board, the high desert's average pay per job is lower. Now, the thing that goes along with all these folks moving, of course, is commuting. Why that occurs is you have a lot of people, but you don't have a lot of jobs. Now, we measure that as economists by what we call the jobs housing ratio. And what it says is for every house in Southern California, you need 1.26 jobs. The fact is the high desert only has 0.73 jobs. So it's way below what's necessary. The consequence is commuting. These are round trip minutes. 78.2 minutes on average across the entire high desert, but go all the way up to 96.8 from Hallandale, 96 from Hesperia, versus San Bernardino County, despite the long commutes people in the valleys take into LA and Orange, is down at 63.4, basically a little over an hour. So that's obviously an issue that jumped out of Barbara Sarotnik's survey. So what are the recommendations for the I-5, which is where this all shows up? There are 3 proposals that have been made over the years. One is to add 2 lanes to each direction on the I-15. Now, every time we've added lanes in Southern California, they immediately get filled up and the traffic doesn't seem to go away. So it's never been a really good solution. But beyond that, there's just no funding to do it. They'd have to be toll lanes, and the tolling would have to pay for them completely. A second option is to get people off the I-15 onto the frontage roads along the side. Once people go into the pass, heading down, move them off along roads that are parallel that work their way down into the valley. This is really expensive because you'd have to do some road cuts out of almost vertical cliffs. You would have to build an overpass, and one possibility, over the I-15. It's expensive, and again, the money's not there to do it. The last and sort of pie-in-the-sky idea was to take the train that's now scheduled to go from Apple Valley up to Las Vegas and shoot it down to Rancho Cucamonga, where it would tie into the Metrolink operation that goes to San Bernardino one way and to LA Union Station the other way. And then use Uber or Lyft off the corridors to get to your jobs. Well, the fact is, not only is that no longer pie in the sky, it is now feasible, doesn't take a lot of public money, and it is timely. And so the San Bernardino County Transportation Authority and the builders of the high-speed rail to Las Vegas have been talking, and those talks have gotten very serious. And that is my recommendation, that the leadership of the high desert really work with San Bernardino County Transportation Authority to have that solution be the one that is chosen. Now that's the number 1 set of issues. The number 2 set of issues come because of the nature of what happened to the high desert when the mortgage crisis hit us. We first of all had mortgage craziness, and you see these little dots, which are existing home sales, and what are they doing? They're going up very fast to a high of 2,149 seasonally adjusted sales late in 2005. At that point, everybody thought it's going to keep going up in price, and therefore that's wonderful. But what you had underlying this was you could borrow money, but you didn't need to qualify for it because they were basically shoveling it out the door. Unfortunately, with the idea that prices would just keep going up. Well, they didn't. So prices crashed, and we ended up with lots of people who had either bought homes that were too expensive for them or cashed out their existing homes, which were to buy SUVs, to buy four-wheelers, to take vacations, whatever. So the result when prices crashed is people are upside down. And so you can see there the foreclosures going way down in terms of the number of sales that are occurring. Now, what happened next with all those houses available is the landlord groups. These are people from Asia or just foreigners in general. These are Wall Street companies, jumped in and acquired all those homes. And why did they acquire them? Well, their original strategy was to first rent them and then sell them and get the capital gain. Unfortunately, it's gotten in the water that they just are holding them and continuing to rent them. After that, the market settled down, but the legacy is to leave behind this huge number of rented homes. Now, looking at how that affected the various communities, in gold on this chart, these are by school district, you see the speed of growth between 2010 and 2018 of the number of single-family rentals in the high desert. 55.8% in Victor Valley, 54.8% in Hesperia, Apple Valley 46, Snowline 20. Barstow didn't see as much of it at 13, and then Lucerne Valley was almost 61% growth. So a huge growth in the number of detached single-family rentals existing in the high desert. Rentals altogether went up 46.7% in that period, even though the number of single-family homes expanded only 6.4%. As a result of all that, where in 2010, 21.4% of houses in the high desert were rentals, that jumped to almost 30%. Anytime this happens, and I've watched it happen in Pomona, I watched it happen in San Bernardino, in Moreno Valley, it's occurring right now in the Hemet-San Jacinto area and in the high desert. It has been very difficult for what it's done to the communities. First of all, you end up with a ton of code enforcement issues for abandoned homes, for homes where the renters aren't taking care of the property. You know, if I rent a home from you and I put my elbow through the wall, I call you up and say there's a hole in the wall. If I own the home and I put my elbow through the wall, my wife's liable to hit me with a bat. So the fact of the matter is that there is less care of homes with renters than owner occupants. You've also had a lot of trash on properties. And then in the bottom left, you see a sheriff officer inside one of the homes in the high desert where pot is being grown. And as you know, that has been a major issue up in the desert, putting enormous pressure on the sheriff's office and also on code enforcement. Equally difficult has been a rise in violent crime, which the public really emphasized in Dr. Soratnik's survey. You've seen that the number of crimes per 1,000 people these are violent crimes, from 5.1 to 6.8. That was up 43% from 2010 to 2019. Incidents were up 1,374, which is 132%, even though the population only grew roughly half that. So what are the recommendations about single-family rentals? Well, first of all, there is a need to get rid of a good portion of them, to get them back to owner occupancy. These neighborhoods were never zoned to be the equivalent of an unmanaged apartment complexes. What they were supposed to be was family-owned, single-family residences. So the cities need to make that a policy that that's what they want to do. So you need to identify them, which actually isn't all that hard. You can identify them very simply by going to the county records and ask, where's the tax bill go? If the tax bill is going to the house, it's likely not a rental. If it's going someplace else, it probably is. Then in order to rent, cities are allowed to charge business license fees and inspection fees for the property before it can be rented. Under Prop 218 in the state, you can't charge anything you want. And I did an analysis, and it looks like cities could be charging for the combination of those two $304.44 for each license to rent. That is higher than any of the cities are doing now. But given the impact that these facilities or these homes are having on costs to take care of the community, I would suggest it's definitely justified. In addition to that, cities need to aggressively pursue code enforcement non-compliance. Under state law, if somebody's not taking care of their property, the city can fine them $100 for a second time in the same year, $200 for a third time, $400, and for more than three, $500 for each incident. And you do have properties that have been that out of control. If in inspecting they find building and safety violations, it's $100 for the first incident, $500 second, and $1,000 for two or more incidents. So this puts pressure on the people that own them to potentially get out of the market in this area. Now, the purpose of this is not to get rid of renters. What we'd like to do is convert renters to owners. So you need to determine when a house is about to be sold. You can use FHA and First-Time Home Program, California HFA, or the veterans loans to help people that are renters get into homes. And then you have a ton of nonprofits and county organizations that can counsel people on buying homes. Again, the purpose is not to get rid of renters, it's to turn them into owners, but certainly to get people in the region back to living in homes that they own. Now, that's the two huge issues coming out of stage one. It is where the Victor Valley currently sits, and it sits there for a reason. It's the newest area to join up to LA, and it is an entirely natural process for it to go through. The problem is it hasn't got into stage two of how areas grow up. Stage two again occurs when home prices keep rising. They start to get beyond even what middle class people can afford. And that is a sign that the market is becoming a little bit out of control. Then we look down in the valley and what do we see? Well, these pictures are of logistics and manufacturing facilities. The large boxes, the manufacturing facilities down the hill. And here's the problem that you're seeing down the hill. The land is almost completely saturated. So if I'm a developer who wants to respond to the demand for logistics facilities for companies like Amazon or Walmart or whatever, I'm running out of places where I can build things down in the valley. So the number one and first target for getting the high desert into stage two, where the jobs pay more, is logistics. Now you've got two up there already. You have Walmart's facility, and you have Big Lots, both in Apple Valley, that have recently been built, running around 1 million square feet, which shows that the market is starting to become ready for this move. In addition to that, Prologis, which is one of the large developing companies, has joined with Sterling out at Southern California Logistics Airport because they're very interested now in testing the market. In talking with the folks at Prologis, one of the things they indicated is their competitors are also all taking a look at where they might be able to expand. Now, we need this expansion because of the economic levels in the high desert. Circled here and in the left in the high desert as a whole, 21.8% of all people living in the high desert are in poverty. That's 1 out of 5 of everybody. If we look at children, it's 30%. Now that is way out of line. If you look at San Bernardino County, which is not exactly the epitome of what you'd like to see, 21.8 versus 14.9, 30.1 versus 21.4. The high desert has much more poverty. When we look at students receiving reduced price meals or free meals at school because of low income, it approaches 3/4 of all the students living in the high desert. So there's a real issue with income that needs to be attacked. Now, when I say that land is disappearing in the valleys, if we take all the land that was still available to build big facilities back in 2018, there were 157 sites, of which 42 were in the high desert, 21 in the low desert, and 59 in Moreno Valley Paris, which is so tied up in lawsuits that will probably never happen. If you take the high desert out, take the deserts in Moreno Valley out, you end up with room for only 35 more facilities in 2018. And in 2019, there was 27.1 million square feet of these facilities being built, which is the equivalent of 27 million square foot facilities. So the market in the valleys is now needing to go someplace else. The most evident sign of this was Amazon's most recent facility, which is being built and just opened in Beaumont. Who would ever thought it would get that far out? I remember spending most of my time studying what was going on in Ontario. Now we're all the way out to Beaumont. So you can see the market is starting to want to head north. Now, what drives this are two phenomena. One, imported goods entering through the ports of LA and Long Beach. This is a chart of the number of containers. We measure them as 20-foot equivalent units of containers. The peak was in 2018. It fell to 90 million containers. It fell to 8.5 in 2018. That was, unfortunately, that's the effect of the tariff policies of the president. It's now fallen in 2020 through July down at 7.6 million, so way off. And you can see the recession there. I'm happy to report that a new number just came out at 8 million, so it jumped back up in August, which was really the strongest month of the year. So we're seeing some correction there in that growth. Second to imported goods coming out to the Inland Empire to be handled in the warehousing and distribution facilities is e-commerce growth. Now, all of you are probably buying online. I don't, but my wife does. And she's on Amazon, too often. Anyway, when we look at this chart, what do we see? This is the growth rates, not the amounts, the growth rates of e-commerce compared to the same quarter the year before. And most recently, when we've all been staying home and buying online, It jumped 44.5% in the last quarter, second quarter 2020 versus last year. Incredible explosion. Once that happens and we get used to doing it, the fact is it'll come off of that when we get back out of the house, but it's not going to come all the way back. So this is a phenomenon that's going to continue. In terms of all the goods being sold, it was 0.8% of all sales in the U.S. back in 2000. Because of that big jump at the end, it's now at 16.1% of all U.S. sales are online. Now, what's gone on in the Inland Empire because of these two phenomena, goods coming in from overseas, e-commerce, is every one of the dots on this chart is a 4-quarter running total. The most recent dot was for the 4 quarters ending in June. So for June to June year, 17,500 companies moved worth of square feet. Companies moved and took that much square feet and brought new jobs with them. This is not companies moving in the area. It's from the outside coming in, bringing new jobs. It's why the Inland Empire this has been the fastest growing sector in the economy. How much space is left? Hardly any, 3.3%, almost a historic low. As a result of that, we've got 19.8 million square feet under construction in June of this year, which means we're using up more and more of that space that is almost now disappearing. Who's second place? The answer is almost who cares? It's LA County. But in this world, LA County, San Diego, Orange, Ventura hardly count. Now the question is, why hasn't it jumped to the high desert sooner? And that is because of drayage costs. Drayage is a truck loaded with goods going someplace. From the ports to Victorville, $775 is the cost of that truck trip. You could see San Bernardino, Moreno Valley, and Paris. Those destinations are much less expensive. So it's 24.4% less expensive if they go to San Bernardino, 25.8 to Moreno Valley, 30.9 if they go down to Paris. So this is what the advantages of the high desert have to overcome if in fact the companies are going to make that change and come up to the high desert region. Now, this then gives us our first priority, which is to get logistics moved. And by the way, I should add one fact as an advantage, and that is that you are in the Mojave Air Quality Management District, not the South Coast Air Management District. South Coast is putting enormous pressure on the logistics industry, to the point is some executives are thinking of completely leaving California and trying to serve the LA market from either Arizona or Nevada. So it's a target. Again, that's an advantage that needs to get in the hands of the people who build these facilities. Now that's the logistics. Aerospace, it's also a target. So you have, because of Southern California Logistics Airport, because of the wide open spaces of the desert, you have aerospace growing in the desert, very high paying jobs. You find these out at Con Ave at the airport. You find it with General Atomics, which builds things like the Predator. I love the Predator because my son is in the Army, or was in the Army. Advanced manufacturing is a third target. Why that? Because you've got companies already growing in the high desert, such as Reed Products, and they pay people that work in electronic and machinists, people like that, and the school districts are training for it. And so it makes possible moving those up. And again, they're under enormous pressure from South Coast Air Quality Management District, so they have a reason to migrate. Another is healthcare as a target. Why healthcare? You've got a big population in the high desert. It is growing. It's also older and younger. And as a consequence of that, you need to grow the healthcare sector. You can see there at Victor Valley College Nursing Department training, but we have training for all levels. It's doctors, it's nurses, but it's also all forms of technicians. So in the high desert, you have a real need for training medical personnel. This is a picture of Victor Valley College's nursing department. So that's one set of technicians. You have everybody from people taking blood to people doing sonograms, all sorts of technical jobs. And so it's a whole variety from technical up through nurses and doctors. Very good paying sector. And another target is construction, both residential, which you've seen before and is starting to pick up again, but on the right tilt up where they take these concrete sides and tilt them up for the large facilities. That'll go along, those jobs will go along with what takes place when we start getting the logistics industry and some of these other sectors to move up. Now, what are the economic development recommendations? On 2 occasions in the last 20 years, the high desert has tried to form operations to reach out to people that aren't in the area to bring their companies into the high desert. They were largely city-based, and in both cases, they fell apart. Now, I've had a lot of experience in creating economic development operations, and my recommendation is to form the High Desert Economic Partnership. This would not be built around cities or the county. It would be built around a private sector board from the high desert's more successful companies. I interviewed 50 leaders, a large number of them running successful companies, tossed this idea out, got very little pushback. I would see somebody on the executive committee of this group, which would be the one that hired the executive director and approved the strategy, paying $15,000 each. $5,000 for non-voting firms who want to be part of the process. They want to support it. That could include the cities and counties who could have a representative participating in quarterly meetings, briefings, committees, and events. And I'd like the cities and counties aligned with it, but not driving it, because you need to be able to exchange information between the organization and the places where companies are going to locate. The target to start up would be $400,000. That could be reached with 20 executive committee members and 20 general members. One of the things that I would be asking people that are willing to join to not let that interfere with their support of the local chambers. We don't need wars. We need an organization to do a different function, which is to reach out. The executive director would recommend and execute the strategy to ensure those targeted that I showed you know about the location advantages of the high desert. I would propose a salary of $110,000 plus benefits to start out. This person needs to be very good. He or she needs to have an understanding of the Mojave Desert Air Quality Management District, because it's a huge advantage. Water issues, site costs, time lags, and development costs in the area cities and in the county areas in the high desert. One of the things I would almost insist on this, and it's what I did when I helped expand the Inland Empire Economic Partnership and change its direction from basically being government-based to being private sector-based, is that executive director be required to undertake one-on-one interviews with at least 50 executive and entrepreneurs of the high desert firms in the sectors that the strategy is going to try and recruit. Obviously, that person would hire staff that can be afforded. It would be hoped to take some pressure off that one entity, whether a business or a local government entity, provide free office space to get started. Now, there's two things that you really can do in economic development, and only two. One is you need to be able to show what the advantages of the high desert are to firms that more than likely don't know about it. Not so much firms, but the companies they go to when they're making a decision to locate. So location consultants are the target market, because a lot of them have no idea what we're talking about here in terms of the advantages of the high desert. The second thing they need to be doing is to work on spotted disadvantages that the high desert has and start working to fix those. And so you need to pressure agencies to do that. Now, law enforcement was a huge issue that came out of Barbara's survey. This are the violent crimes per 1,000 people in the major cities of the Inland Empire, as well as in all the cities of the high desert. As you can see, the high desert at 6.8 is higher than the city of San Bernardino, and the city of San Bernardino is one of the worst in the state. That kind of shows you the difficulty. Higher than the high desert average, Victorville and Adelanto and Barstow quite a bit higher. Hesperia and Apple Valley are a little bit better, but nowhere near the bulk of cities in the county. Property crime is modestly higher. Barstow is way out there, sorry. San Bernardino and Rancho Cucamonga are better off than the high desert. And then the next city in the high desert is Victorville, which is not quite as bad as Rancho Cucamonga and San Bernardino. And then it goes down from there, 18. Now these are, what are property crimes are larceny, auto theft, burglary. These are not as violent, but they still are crimes that affect people's lives. The sheriff's office, in terms of dealing with the crime issue, is frankly overwhelmed because of the staffing. Now, why is it so understaffed? And this is a picture of why. Most cities get their money off the sales tax. In 2006, the high desert cities combined collected $3.88 billion in sales taxes. 2019, after diving and growing back, that was up to $4.32 billion. So it had grown 11.3%. The problem, as you see in the yellow box, is inflation in that period was 30.3%, almost triple what the sales went up, which means the purchasing power of cities has declined from their sales tax revenues. So they can't buy as much. Each dollar they collect isn't worth as much when they go to pay for things. So that's why you have underfunding. So what are the strategic recommendations? And the staffing issue, Barstow has addressed theirs. It's why they have the lowest ratio per officer. They put a 1% sales tax on the ballot because they had not enough funds to do anything else. It passed 59.2%. That tells you the public in the city of Barstow gets it. The other 4 cities have high numbers and they need to do something. My recommendation is they take on a 1% sales tax to add sheriffs, code enforcement officers, and firemen. This is actually on the ballot in November for Victorville and Apple Valley, and we'll see whether or not the public is willing to put their money where their attitude is about the level of concern over crime. Public passage of tax increases is possible, as Barstow showed, and also the intense or high vote for Measure I transportation measures that people made because they understood that transportation was a mess. Now, by the way, public officials don't like putting taxes on, but they can be saved if the public in fact gets it and really wants something, they're willing to pay for it. Now, if the funds become available, what should be done with it? That's another issue. It should be split, I would suggest, between sworn officers, who are expensive, and a lot less costly non-sworn officers. Sheriff's Office calls them service specialists. These are people who can take reports, particularly if the crime scene is no longer active, collect evidence, close traffic lanes, enforce parking violations, all of those sort of ministerial functions that don't require a sworn sheriff officer. That frees up the sheriff's officers to be more visible, which is really one of the things absent right now because they're all at crime scenes, and so they're not showing the flag in a sense. Also, it gives them some time to self-initiate efforts to reduce crime from their intimate knowledge of the community. It has also been suggested, and it sounds to me like a very good idea, to cut the communities into smaller districts that a group of non-sworn and sworn officers would patrol within, which would allow you to take your highest crime areas and put a few more people there to help damp that down. Then one sort of, in a sense, off the wall, but not entirely off the wall. You're all aware that cannabis is an issue in the high desert illegally in terms of growing weed inside houses. That's putting us enormous pressure on code enforcement and the sheriff's office to deal with it. Since California has legalized it, the California Bureau of Cannabis Control has the authority to fine companies or operations that are out of line $30,000 an issue. Unfortunately, they're still getting their act together, and really enormous pressure needs to be brought on Sacramento to get a handle on this, because right now it's falling on local code enforcement and on the sheriff's office. They've got enough to do. They're not taking care of that issue. Now, education looms as probably the long-term major issue facing the high desert, whether it's elementary schools like Phelan, high schools like Sultana, community colleges like Victor Valley and Barstow, and then you have the Mountain Desert Career Pathways Project, which is trying to knit those all together. One recommendation before I get into dealing with that, which is an immediate issue, and that is local funding needs to be developed to supply online access to every high desert student, since they're all locked down by COVID-19, and many of them don't have the capability to do their schoolwork online because they just don't have the ability. Now, this is a huge challenge. Amongst the adult population of the high desert, 50.8%, this is 25 and over, have no education beyond high school. You can see that's higher than either of the two inland counties, 9% above LA County, and almost 20% above San Diego and Orange. So this is a real difficulty. It lines up with why incomes are lower. If we reverse it and look at AA+, which are the taller bars in blue, or we look at BA+, you see there's very few people in the high desert with a bachelor's degree, 13.4% of the population. That compares to 21.4 in the county, which is not very good. LA, San Diego, Orange, 32, 38, 41. Those, if you add AA degrees in, that 22 compares to almost 30 in the two counties, almost 40 in LA, and over 45% in San Diego and Orange. Essentially what this says is the third stage in the growing up of a new area added to LA is not even on the horizon for the high desert, because that's when high-end companies in offices with high-end jobs migrate. There isn't a labor force to be able to handle those kinds of companies. So when we look at how the schools are performing, the state has a standard in English and writing and in math that they would like to see students exceed. On the math, in English, what you see is no district in the high desert has reached the level of success of the state. In English, slightly over half of students have excelled that level. In math, about 40% in the state. All of the districts in the high desert are below the state. The county comes in at 44.8 on English, and the county comes in at 31.5 on math. The two districts that have done the best on these standards are Hellendale Elementary, below the state but above the county, and Hellendale and Snowline in mathematics, below the state and above the county. After that, all of the districts are below the county. And again, the county's numbers aren't all that great to begin with. So motivating students to want to succeed is a huge issue. So the question is how? Well, one other thing is who's been completing their University of California and Cal State University coursework by the time they're seniors in the local schools. In California, 44.3% of seniors had. San Bernardino's not that far behind, 40.6%. Once we get into the high desert, the high is Apple Valley at 36.5%, down to 16.8% in Barstow. So there has not been a lot of performance on taking those courses and passing them in K through 12. Graduates going to college, California, 65.8%, Barstow, 61.4%, county average, 61%. All the other districts are in the 50s, from Victor Valley at a high of 57% to 53.8%. These were seniors graduating in 2018 and went on to college. Now, K through 12 strategies that are working is an important issue we face. That is, how do you motivate kids? How do you get them to want to learn? How do you get them and their families to want to aspire to go to college? This has been, for my 55 years as a professional, a huge issue we've never really solved. But there are two places that have done really good work of late. One of those is in the Coachella Valley, the low desert. They have a program called One Future Coachella Valley. And what it tries to do is get students interested in their coursework because they see its relevance to the real world. That it isn't just doing algebra, that understanding that that may have something to do with working in home building, or something to do with becoming an engineer, something to do with becoming a doctor. The program tries to do that by interacting heavily with the local business community. First of all, elementary students in that area, in their K through 8 work, K through 6, health, science, and STEM careers, they look at as possible futures. This is brought to them in the classroom. When they get to the 6th to 12th grade, career academies have been set up in the high schools where, because of looking around, students realize that this is something they'd like to explore more. So from 6 to 8, what they do is they go on lots of visitations to firms and agencies to see what the world of work actually looks like, to try and whet their appetite for some sort of career. From 9 to 12, they can then choose in an academy where their coursework is directly related. So for instance, a healthcare academy, their coursework would deal with the issues that doctors, that the technicians, that the nurses have to deal with, so that there's some relevance rather than just abstractly taking things for no particular reason. How do you write a memo from a nurse to a doctor, from a executive over in some part of the hospital to a staff? How do you do those things? First thing they do in 9 to 12, the earlier years, they job shadow, which means go to a site and follow people around that are working to get an understanding of what the jobs look like, what the environment is like. Later, they can qualify to actually work as interns if they really do their efforts well. They have help from mentors in the industries of the academy, giving them technical advice and critiquing the work that they're doing in school that relates to that sector. Their instructors will be paid for internships or externships where they actually work on the job during a period when they're not teaching, so they have actual job experience to bring back to the classroom. As I indicate, they're paid for that work. This has been going on for 7 or 8 years out in Coachella Valley. It has become increasingly successful. At graduations, students who've gone through the programs are pre-qualified for community college or university in their fields, and scholarships and financial aid are put together to help them move on. Now that's One Future Coachella Valley. A different approach has been going on with a program called Promise Scholars. This is in the Ontario Montclair K through 8 district and in the Chaffey High School district. This works with students and their parents and this is in a community that's heavily minority, to basically convince the parents and the students that college level work, whether it's technical or academic, is very much possible for them. It works hard to get parents to understand what a college environment, whether it's at a community college or at a four-year college, what that looks like and how students like their own are succeeding. The program also provides classwork and tutoring to ensure that the students who go through the program are ready for college level work. Students are given 3 guarantees. 1, they finish the program all the way through senior year, they'll be ready for college. Number 2, they are guaranteed admission to any of the schools in San Bernardino and Riverside County. And then 3, they will be given financing to afford it. From kindergarten on in the Promise Scholar program, children and their parents are put into a process to create a mindset for a college future. Rigorous coursework starting in kindergarten on will assure students can achieve academic success. Students are available for those who, or tutors are available for students that are falling behind. Parallel with what's going on in the classroom, support programs are in place that embrace college students by taking parents and students on visits to the campuses of different types of community colleges and universities. Parental workshops are run. Class exploration, career exploration classes are put on. And also in the evening, local leaders with whom parents should be able to identify put on discussions explaining their own educational paths and careers in the field to show that it is very possible for the students and the parents to achieve this. Seniors, when they get there, are assisted in comparing different career training types, the value and cost of different kinds of colleges. They get assistance with college applications, with financial applications, and they're put through workshops to try and get scholarships and financial aid. AmeriCorps was tapped, so members of that assist in the process, as to volunteers, plus the cities are involved, and nonprofit financing. Every major public and private college and university in the urban areas is involved in the Promise Scholar program. Again, highly successful, where before they started it, 40% of high school students were going on to college. That was raised to 60%. A huge victory. So those are strategies. And what is recommended for the high desert? 2 key elements. You really need to involve the parents all the way through, but particularly in the elementary grades. Second, you need high-level business involvement to ensure that students see the relevancy of their educations to the working world. The elementary school recommendations is that the Promise Scholar strategy be used so that students and parents get the mindset of going on to college. Remember, a lot of the parents themselves have had no such experience. The provision of a guarantee of interest to community college or university and financing if the student stays in the program is a key element. Discussions need to be held between local elementary school principals and Leslie Sorensen, who is the prime mover of Promise Scholars in the Coachella Valley. For middle and high schools, what I would recommend is the Promise Scholar operation continue on, but simultaneously that what goes on is you add the One Future Coachella Valley framework so that students by their 6th grade are hopefully beginning to think about, what's this all about? Why am I in school? What am I going to end up doing when I get out? So that's where the job visitations on sites of various kinds would occur. 9th to 12th would be access to academies in key districts with job shadowing, and that the academies could be in the high desert pretty much the same sectors I talked about in terms of targeting: aerospace, healthcare, logistics, mining, construction, manufacturing, since those are the key sectors of the high desert. So folks can, or students can, get the idea of what's it like to work in those sectors that are in the high desert and should be growing in the high desert as we move forward. Again, the paid externships for teachers is important. Here you need to have discussions between the K-12 community college leaders and the Mountain Desert Economic Partnership or Joint Power Agency. Those need to be working with Sheila Thornton. Sheila was the one who thought up and executed One Future Coachella Valley. I worked with the Coachella Valley Economic Partnership to put this together. Now that's K through 12. College education, if we look at enrollment, 1288 at Victor Valley, 2865 at Barstow, so a total of about 15,000 in 2019. There are 4 tracks that people go on, 5 tracks, in the community colleges. The graduates in 2019, 1,140 went on to college. 1,462 got Associate Arts, not necessarily going on to college. 2,934 career technical education, which is a major push now by the state to train people to work in the kind of industries in the various communities. In this case, the communities would be the high desert. Certificates of things like fire science, working with ambulances, that sort of thing, 409. And then you had 2,391 adults go back to take basic educational skills on the community college campuses to raise their own ability to function in our increasingly education-oriented society. Now, that's the community colleges. The 4-year colleges, you've got several private schools from Azusa Pacific through Park University, which is co-located at Victor Valley College. The problem for 4-year colleges is there really isn't a public school in the high desert. There have been conversations with Cal State University San Bernardino, which have not gone anywhere, UCR and Cal Poly. In all these cases, the issue is you've got to commute down the 15 to go to classes on these campuses. So their education requirement for community colleges, it's good that they're involved with the Mountain Desert JPA group, which is trying to knit together K through 12 together with the community's colleges in a program like that in the Coachella Valley. As part of the K through 12, of course, you need to have the community colleges hosting tours by students and parents all the way through so that the parents have the opportunity, along with their students, to sample the college environment. These operations have been educating students for transfer work to the community, to the 4-year schools forever. The new emphasis on technical education is really welcome because that's central to most high desert sectors today. We need local businesses to continue to foster that effort and to participate in it. 4-year colleges, you need one in the high desert. It is pretty clear that unlike Coachella Valley, which has a lot of very wealthy folks living in it, one of them actually donated a campus to allow Cal State to have a campus out there. What you need is a public open there. The commute really stops the ability of students to easily go to four-year schools and still live at home. I believe there is a chance that what's going on with COVID-19 may open up a solution. First of all, Cal State's already announced all of its classes this year will be online, which means the staff have to learn how to teach online, and students are having to understand how to do their homework and their interactions online. The second thing going on is Zooming. I think almost everybody that's watching this is Zoomed with somebody. That technology's taken off. The only problem I have with it is I forgot to invest on it when I suddenly saw how valuable it was. But if you put together people's ability to Zoom together with online classes, putting that together, you could integrate Cal State University San Bernardino, or for that matter, Cal Poly, completely into the high desert. What you might do is put a permanent campus office at either Barstow or Victor Valley College to handle enrollment and counseling of students. And then the students could participate in lectures or discussions online for the bulk of their work. And once we get out of COVID, occasionally go down to the campus for testing or some other issue. I will tell you that my daughter has finished her second 4 years, her junior and senior year, online, and now is just about finished her master's degree online. And it was exactly this process, using, again, Zoom for group discussions or in discussions with the instructor, making an occasional visit to the campus, which her case is in another state. And finally, the last issue, homelessness. These are the major concentration of the homeless population in San Bernardino County in April 2020. There were 1,056 in San Bernardino. In all the high desert cities combined, there were 646. Of those, 451 were in Victorville. Interestingly enough, where I live in Redlands was, next after Victorville with 186. So no community is completely immune to this issue, but it's really a major one in the high desert. San Bernardino, of course, is catastrophic. If we look at how it's increased in the high desert, it went from 456 in 2019 to 646 in 2020. Victorville, if you see over there on the left, has gone from 333 to 451. Barstow, it jumped from 62 to 108. So that's where it is located. So how can we handle the homeless situation? First of all, nobody's come up with a good solution. So lots of things have been tried. I'd like to look at what is moving ahead in the high desert, which seems to have some possibilities. So here are the recommendations. First of all, there is a Desert Regional Steering Committee on homelessness, and it has several priorities. It's time to get from the priorities and the conversation to the implementation phase. First of all, this requires a regional solution. There are two cities that are not formally part of that discussion of the steering committee. It would be helpful if they became formal members of it. Their major priority is to build a wellness and recuperative care center in the city of Victorville on city-owned property. Remember, Victorville has the heaviest concentration of homeless in the high desert. It would have 100 beds for men and women and families, and 50 for those needing medical treatment. That 50 is important because right now, if a homeless person is in the hospital, gets medical treatment, they cannot be released from those expensive beds until they are completely cured. So this would be financially very helpful. At the center, nonprofits and agencies could do mental health work, job and housing assistance. There'd be pet kennels and storage lockers, and places for the homeless to hang besides on street corners. This is being done through, or paid for, hopefully, from grant applications to the state, to the Department of Homeless Housing Assistance and Prevention, and a program called Home Key Funding. Victorville has approved the applications. It is awaiting county approval to go forward. In addition to that center, a second issue is the county has been reconditioning the Queens Motel in North Victorville to provide transitional housing for 30 homeless people. It was to open in August. It needs to get open if it hasn't already. This does not really help Barstow, which is too far away for a shelter in Victorville. So the city itself has to identify a site, apply for $600 million in California Home Key funding, which is a program available to take a site and create shelter. And it will need the county endorsement. Another thing that needs to be done is to increase family housing in the various communities on locations where you have dilapidated buildings that can be rehabilitated. There is a need to ID such sites. 36, for instance, have been found in Victorville, which has applied for funding. Again, at those sites, this would also help with the decay of housing issue that's come about from the single-family rental program. And then it would be helpful if some combination of agencies could help fund nonprofits to purchase small buses and vans which are used to take people, some of whom are homeless, some are not, some are shut-ins, for meals, shelter, counseling, and employment. And finally, given the fact that homelessness jumped as one of the top issues in the high desert, an organized effort to get elected leaders to give the needed assistance to the committee's efforts to move it from planning to implementation would be helpful. Now that completes my presentation. It completes the look that's been made at this whole issue over 6 months between myself and Barbara Sarotnik. Going forward, to whether any of this occurs, largely is going to be up to those of you who's watching it. If you would like this PowerPoint, you're going to be able to download it at www.johnhusing.com, which you can see on the screen. And the fact is that it may also be available other places directly in the high desert. I suspect that probably is something that Joe Brady will be arranging. I thank you very much for listening to this rather data-heavy and complex subject. I will tell you it has been an honor as well as fun for me to work on it. Thank you very much.
High Desert Survey is here to help strengthen our community. Visit us online at www.highdesertsurvey.com or find us on social media by searching High Desert Survey.
The biggest surprise of the results in the survey were a lot of statements. Well, my favorite part were the statements of where everybody loved the high desert, but. I love the high desert, but. And it was something severe to where the neighborhood they have bought their home in and started raising their family took a wrong turn, or the homelessness, or it was 7th Street. There was a huge but. But there was no lack of love for the high desert at the same time. The High Desert Survey is going to help facilitate that process by putting pressure on people to go ahead and get involved. It's also going to be the main hub of information where we are going to list out all kinds of resources of places you get involved with, whether it be Rotary clubs, chambers of commerce, city council meetings. There's a place for everyone to go ahead and get involved.
I'd like to thank everybody that took their Sunday to do this. And for those of you that didn't get a chance to view this live on October 4th, where we anticipate having about 10,000 people on Facebook, I want to thank you for watching this whenever you can. I thank you for sharing this. Again, this is not about, this is about trying to find a solution to the issues in the high desert region, and to challenge each and every one of you to say, okay, what can be your part to do this? If we want to change things, it's going to take all of us to do it. So on behalf of my wife, Deborah K. Brady, Taylor Titus in our office, April Tyler that used to work with us that is now in Utah, Nikki Metzger, our Director of Marketing, Francisco Diaz, our Vice President, Anthony Diaz. And last, I want to give a personal plug to somebody that has been with our firm for the last 6 years, Paul A. Casilla. Paul, I want to thank you personally for reminding me how important J.J. Borges and Cleet, and how important you thought he was to talk to us. And I just want to thank you on behalf of the balance of people in the office, but most importantly, the 13,075 people that responded and all those people who are watching today. God bless you, Paul. And most importantly, all of our clients, I thank you in advance for allowing us to participate in this, and I look forward to being a part of the bigger picture and the solution in the future. Thank you.
High Desert Survey is here to help better our community. Visit us online at www.highdesertsurvey.com or find us on social media by searching High Desert Survey.